In the Netherlands, Venezuela presented historical evidence before the International Court of Justice to defend its historical position on the Guayana Esequiba controversy. In Argentina, health authorities reported 161 deaths due to the dengue fever outbreak affecting the country. In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces broke into the city of Tulkarem and its refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In the Netherlands, Venezuela presented arguments before the International Court of Justice to expose the truth and defend its historical position on the historical controversy on Guayana Esequiba. The Vice President of Venezuela, teleSUR, delivered before the ICJ a document and its copies with the historical truth and evidence that proves the delimitation of the borders and the title over the territory of Guayana Esequiba. The Venezuelan diplomatic affirmed that the only valid instrument is the Geneva Agreement of 1966 and also affirmed that the award of 1899 was a fraud to dispose Venezuela. The government also claims its historical right over the Esequiba territory and denounces to the world that aggression against Venezuela is orchestrated from Guyana.
We have delivered a document with the historical truth of Venezuela, an official position where hundreds of evidence, prove that a crime was committed in 1899 with a fraudulent award. We have demonstrated the historical fraud, and we have also shown how it's intended again to commit another crime through instrumentalizing the International Court of Justice. Venezuela is a country that is recognized for its adherence to international legality, and that is why we have also not only ratified our historical position that Venezuela has never consent to jurisdiction of this court to hear about the territorial dispute about Guayana Esequiba, but we have alert how in an unusual way Guyana pretends in the full 21st century to validate a fraud, to validate a crime that was committed 125 years ago.
The Venezuelan Vice President emphasized that this action does not imply her country's recognition of the jurisdiction of the court in territorial dispute.
The delivery of this document does not imply the consent of Venezuela, nor the recognition of the jurisdiction of the court in the territorial dispute over the Guayana Esequiba, nor of the decision it may adopt on this matter. In March 2018, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela was informed of one of the most serious acts in the history of the dispute over the Esequibo. The Cooperative Republic of Guyana had dared to violently break with the Geneva Agreement and international legality by unilaterally demanding before the International Court of Justice the validity of the fraudulent arbitral award of 1899 in an irregular manner.
In this context, Rodriguez also denounced that Guyana, together with ExxonMobil and the United States, have been trying to, since 2015, to mock the 1966 Geneva Agreement.
Venezuela, without delay, opposed this dangerous, unlawful move by Guyana, driven by ExxonMobil since 2015, and backed by the government of the United States of America, that only aims to disregard and mock the obligations clearly established for the parties in the Geneva Agreement of 1966.
After presenting the historical evidence of Venezuela's sovereignty over Guayana Esequiba, the Venezuelan Executive Vice President Rodriguez posted on her X account Venezuela's official statement on the matter. Rodriguez wrote, "The truth of Venezuela will prevail in the face of the territorial dispossession committed through a fraudulent and criminal war. Venezuela as a whole, in national union, will recover that Guayana Esequiba by means of the Geneva Agreement. The moment of truth has arrived." On Monday, the foreign ministers of Colombia and Venezuela held a dialogue during the first meeting of the follow-up mechanism of the Neighborhood and Integration Commission. The meeting is held in the Colombian border city of Cúcuta. On X, Colombian Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo said they were making progress in harmonious relations with neighboring countries. For his part, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Gil posted on X also that it was an honor to be in the city of Cúcuta to meet with the Colombian Foreign Minister and his outstanding team to strengthen unity and cooperation between both countries. During this visit, we will share positive news that will benefit both nations. Mexican diplomatic personnel arrived in the country after Ecuador's invasion of the Mexican embassy in Quito. A press conference was held chaired by Mexican Foreign Minister Alicia Bárcena, where she thanked the governments of Cuba, Germany, Honduras, and Panama for accompanying the diplomats. At the conference, Mexico condemned the violation of its embassy, ratifying that the act is a violation of the Vienna Convention. For her part, the foreign minister affirmed that all preparations are ready for Monday's presentation of the case at the International Supreme Court of The Hague. And after Ecuadorian security forces stormed their country's embassy in Quito to arrest former Vice President Jorge Glass, Mexican citizens took to the streets to condemn such actions by the Ecuadorian government.
When this happens, it is a problem of great magnitude because it destabilizes Latin America and, above all, allows other countries to attempt to violate the Vienna Convention.
Mexico's reaction of breaking relations with Ecuador seems appropriate to me because it cannot be allowed that a nation invades and enters the embassy of another country. In this case, it was the embassy of Mexico, and we cannot allow it.
And now we have a fragment of the interview gave by the Foreign Affairs Minister of Ecuador, Gabriel Sommerfield, explaining the position of the office in face of the Mexican embassy intervention. Let's see.
Relations are not only destroyed by one act, it indeed has a cost for the country, which was also analyzed at the time of deciding by the President of the Republic.
The President gave the direct order?
Of course, his dictating foreign policy.
Someone opposed this presidential decision? Did someone say, Mr. President, we are going to violate the Vienna Convention?
No, it is up to us as a foreign ministry to advise. First to inform, through an extensive report of everything current. And second, of course, to tell the President what the consequences of one or another may be. And this was on the table. The President is defending democracy and the security of the country.
It was either that or the glass runaway.
Imagine what would have happened. Imagine what was happening in the country. And there was also a clear interference of a foreign state in the affairs of Ecuador.
You knew that glass was leaving the embassy that night?
The President informed us that he had intel about it.
Why they didn't wait outside and capture him on the street?
Well, those are already strategies that do not belong to the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and I could not say. What we do is inform, advise, and of course act according to the decisions taken.
In Argentina, health authorities report that the number of deaths due to the dengue fever outbreak affecting the country rose to 161. The health ministry registered so far more than 232,000 cases, an increase of over 52,000 cases compared to the previous week's report. The deaths were recorded in all age groups, with the highest mortality rate in those over 80, while the highest number of cases occurred in the people between 30 and 39 years of age. Months ago, the Pan American Health Organization warned about an increase in the number of dengue cases in Latin America. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Palestine, a large body of the Israeli occupation army broke into the city of Tulkarem and its refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Wafa news agency reported that Israeli forces using bulldozers caused systematic destruction of infrastructure. During the siege, snipers were installed on rooftops, while surveillance planes were flying at low altitudes. Also, a young Palestinian woman was killed on Monday morning after being shot by Zionist soldiers at teleSUR military checkpoint at the east of Tubas. On the other hand, 2 others were injured during a raid on the Balata refugee camp east of Nablus. Displaced people living in Rafah city continue to suffer the attacks of the Israeli occupation army. More details with our correspondent Noor Harasin.
The situation here in Rafah is not stable. Yes, there is hundreds of Israeli airstrikes that happened in the city over the past weeks and months. There is hundreds of people, thousands of people actually, who were killed in the city of Rafah. But the situation recently and in the past 24 hours is actually very much worrying people here on the ground. The Israeli quadcopter drone were hovering over low altitudes here in the coast in Rafah, shooting towards Palestinian homes in Khirbat al-Adas, also in Hayy Salam area, which is very close to the border between Gaza and Egypt. There were a number of strikes in Tal Sultan and the An-Najma neighborhoods here in Rafah, and this comes as we are only one day away from the end of the month of Ramadan, and as there is some leaked news from Hamas leaders that the truce negotiations have failed because the Israeli side refused to withdraw from the Netzarim point, and it is the point where the north and the south of Gaza are linked, and so it means that the Israeli troops will still control the main road that is linking the two areas or the two sides of the coastal enclave together. However, this is something that Hamas from its side and also Palestinians here on the ground does not want. They want the full control back over the Gaza Strip, and they want to go back to their homes in northern Gaza. Talking some numbers, and according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the number of Palestinians that were killed in Gaza since the 7th of October have reached 33,200 people. 72% of them are women and children. Noor Harasin, teleSUR, Gaza.
In Israel, thousands of citizens gathered in protest to demand new agreements with Palestine, including the release of hostages in Gaza. Demonstrators crowded in front of the Israeli parliament, where they expressed their dissatisfaction with the decisions of the executive regarding the conflict. They also demanded the government increase its efforts to guarantee the release of prisoners, despite the conflicts with neighboring Palestine. At the same time, different organizations and nations have spoken up to urge a cessation of hostilities by Israel against the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister affirmed that there will be no ceasefire in Gaza on the 6-month mark of the Israeli siege against Palestine. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that the ceasefire will not be given if Hamas does not return the Israeli prisoners to Tel Aviv. He also added that Israel will not give in to the demands of the international community, adding that the United States shares the opinion of the occupation.
I made it clear to the international community there will be no ceasefire without the return of hostages. It just won't happen. This is the policy of the Israeli government, and I welcome the fact that the Biden administration made it clear the other day that this is still its position as well.
In Palestine, Israeli occupation forces committed 4 massacres over the weekend in Gaza, killing at least 38 civilians. Health authorities also reported over 71 people injured in these violent actions. Since October 7, 2023, the death toll rose to 33,175, while the number of wounded stands at 75,886. More than 70% of these attacks victims are women and children. The Palestinian Health Ministry says these figures are even higher since many civilians remain on the rubble of infrastructures affected by the bombings. The United Nations says Security Council resolution for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza is fully binding and must be implemented. UN Special Rapporteur on Occupied Palestinian Territories, Francesca Albanese, denounced the lack of clear actions regarding a ceasefire on the part of Israel in Gaza, which she said should be implemented as soon as possible. Ms. Albanese reiterated that there are still many things that need to be done to ensure the flow of aid into Gaza, including the opening of all border crossing points. She said Israel, as the occupying power, has the responsibility to do so, but has failed to fulfill such obligation. In Gaza, nearly 1.1 million people are suffering the most severe stage of hunger due to food shortages amidst the Israeli siege. According to the World Food Programme, the number of civilians in Gaza facing catastrophic hunger has doubled in less than 3 months, from 570,000 in December to the current 1.1 million. The agency said it is the highest number ever recorded on the Integrated Food Security Classification System. The agency also said malnutrition among children is rampant, with 1 in 3 children under the age of 2 is now severely malnourished. We have a fun short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin American and Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Fun short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Russia, the government has declared the recent flooding in the Orenburg region as a federal emergency. Rescue teams continue to evacuate people in the affected area. The emergency ministry announced that the overflow of the Ural River caused a dam to break, and in turn, the flooding, which has been considered as a federal emergency, in order to allot necessary resources for an appropriate quick response. The emergency ministry reports that over 4,100 people are working in the area. Authorities report that over 6,600 residential buildings in the city of Orsk, bordering with Kazakhstan, are flooded and without electricity. Meanwhile, over 4,000 people have been evacuated, including 885 children.
People are being evacuated using watercraft, inflatable boats, and transporters that can accommodate up to 50 people. The evacuation is being carried out gradually, street by street, and people are also being notified through loudspeakers. We recommend that the residents listen to the advice of the emergency ministry and leave the danger zone, because now the water is gradually rising and it is expected that it will continue to rise.
In Azerbaijan, the government has denounced shelling of its army position from the border with Armenia. Azerbaijan's defense ministry said that Armenia attacked at least 16 times Azerbaijani army checkpoints. Therefore, every military district in the country is implementing preventive measures. Let's recall that Armenia's foreign ministry had announced that the signing of the peace treaty between the two nations is stalled because no consensus has been reached on the mutual recognition of the territorial integrity and the resumption of communications. On Sunday, Chinese Premier Li Qiang met with U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen in Beijing. The Chinese premier said his nation hopes that the United States will abide by the basic norms of market economy, including fair competition and open cooperation, refrain from turning economic and trade issues into political or security issues. Li added that China is willing to strengthen policy coordination with the United States on climate change and other issues to jointly address global challenges. For her part, Yellen said that with the joint efforts of both sides, the U.S.-China relationship has become more stable. The U.S. Treasury Secretary is on an official visit to China from April 4th to the 9th. On Monday, a solar eclipse is set to move across a wide portion of North America. The astronomical phenomenon will be fully visible from Mexico, Canada, and the United States. In this particular event, the Sun, the Moon, and the Earth will be aligned. The eclipse will be broadcasted by numerous astronomy research centers, including the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. According to the researchers, The event will last 2 hours and 45 minutes, and the total eclipse, when the moon moves between the Earth and the Sun, will have an approximate duration of 4 minutes and 28 seconds. According to the astronomical centers, the next total solar eclipse will be in approximately 20 years and will be equally visible in North America. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.